说实话，今天很多人对美国的霸道感到费解，但如果你听过香港大佬陈启宗这段发言，你会倒吸一口凉气。他直接把美国外交扒得连底裤都不剩。这不是灯塔，而是收保护费的黑手党。看原篇。
In hindsight, a lot of people don't like the Cold War. After all, perhaps we're entering into a new Cold War. So, most people assume that the Cold War is bad. Well, no one likes wars of any sort, hot or cold. And surely Cold War was a dangerous time. Just remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. Mankind has never been so close to a nuclear confrontation like that time. However, think about this. Cold War is bad, but perhaps hot war is worse, or even the absence of Cold War can become very, very problematic. For example, during the Cold War, the United States was under restraint because of the presence of the then Soviet Union. The United States had no choice but to work with many of its allies. And it cannot do whatever it wants. It was under certain kind of restraint, self-imposed or otherwise, because of the presence of the Cold War. Everybody was, in the free world, so to speak, was happy when the Cold War ended. However, as mankind, the wisdom of mankind has taught us, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The United States was under constraint, under restraint during the Cold War. After the Cold War, there's no longer any restraint. The United States can wield its power whichever way it wants. Is that good or is it bad? If the adage is correct, that absolute power corrupts absolutely, then perhaps we should think twice. That Cold War is necessarily bad and the end of the Cold War is necessarily good. The United States, as Annie mentioned, oftentimes that which applies to a person applies to a country, or that which applies to a country also applies to a person. And the United States have been just too strong, too powerful for too long. It can do anything it wants. And in the absence of restraint because of the end of the Cold War, the United States actually begin to cut down its own credibility and moral authority. This is something that is seldom mentioned. Most people do not spend much time thinking, and certainly not out of the box. And so everyone assumed that Cold War is bad. And I remember an author, I forgot who it was, that wrote a piece recently. Cold War is bad, but hot war is worse. Well, we're not at hot war yet. But in the absence of Cold War, the possibility of hot war actually may increase rather than decrease. So today, we all know what's happening. The United States has decided to make China into an enemy. For those of us who have been working for the last, I personally have been working for 30-some years to try to forge better relationship between China and the United States, I have failed. I've completely failed. And in hindsight, perhaps I too suffer from a syndrome of wishful thinking, that perhaps the United States will be wiser than all other former powers, which will make room for other people and to coexist together as other people rises.
听完这段是不是觉得脊背发凉？咱们过去总以为美国和欧洲、日韩是基于所谓共同价值观的铁杆盟友，但陈启宗毫不留情地挑破了这层窗户纸。 这压根不是什么基于规则的国际秩序，这就叫交保护费保平安。当老大觉得家里缺钱了，转过头来逼着小弟多掏钱，这本质上改变了联盟的性质。就像他比喻的那样，一个是穿着西装打领带，一个是带着纸虎，但底层的黑手党逻辑是一模一样的。但问题来了，美国当年也是有头有脸的世界灯塔，为什么现在敢这么明目张胆，连演都不演了？这就引出了他当年讲到的第二个，也是最反常识的一个认知裂缝。我们都以为冷战的结束是全人类的福音，但对于美国来说，这真的是件好事吗？大家凭直觉肯定觉得没有冷战，世界和平当然好啊，但地缘政治的底层逻辑往往是非常残酷的。陈老先生在5年前就极其敏锐地指出，苏联解体其实是打开了美国绝对权力导致绝对腐败的潘多拉魔盒。当一个超级大国在这个地球上彻底失去了外部制衡，它就不可避免的会走向自我毁灭的狂飙之路。我们来看看他是怎么拆解这段历史惯性的。
Finance, economics means a lot. Consider what Donald Trump did with the NATO so-called allies. They are now asking American allies in Western Europe to pay for more of NATO. When I first heard about it, I said, makes sense. You know, you get protection, why not pay more? But then upon further consideration, I decided that perhaps it's more complicated than that. Perhaps by asking the European countries to pay more, it fundamentally changes the relationship between the United States and the European countries. Let me say this, Commissioner Shea and all the Consul General, please forgive me. I'm going to say something not so good about your profession, diplomacy. As far as I can tell, and I've been reading about diplomacy for the last 40 years, as far as I can tell, diplomacy operates on the exact same principle as the mafia. It's just one with suits and ties and white gloves, and the other has brass knuckles. That's all. Sorry. So, in the old days, when the United States was willing to pay a lot for NATO, because there's a big bad guy supposedly out there called Soviet Union. And so the relationship, to use the mafia analogy, is that America is a boss. And all the European countries are the stooges. I pay you, and you fight that bad guy out there. So just like in mafia, those mafia boys, those stooges, are always very loyal to the big boss because he pays you. And by the way, you have no choice anyway. You are stuck in Europe right next to the Soviet Union in those days. So they're very happy with the arrangement. But what about today? Today, America is saying, pay up. You have to pay more. That changes the relationship from one of the not so nice mafia arrangement to a much nicer one, but still not that good. And that is, what America is doing now is extracting protection money. You own a shop in some Shui-Bo or Tuen Mun or somewhere. And there are a little bit of mafia. Hong Kong is not bad. Hong Kong is really quite good compared to many parts of the world. But still, I dare not say there's no such thing, right? The bad guy comes and say, hey, give me money. If not, I will do something to you. And so if you are that shop owner, you will think, which is the lesser of two evils? The guy who wants money from me or Russia? And some of them may come to the conclusion, well, perhaps Russia is not that bad of a threat. Perhaps this guy is even bigger of a nuisance to us, the simple shop owners and keepers. And so because of that, the fundamental relationship between the United States and its allies have been changed.
这就是地缘政治里最底层也最让人无奈的真相。没有约束的权力不仅会腐蚀一个人，更会腐蚀一个超级大国。当没有任何外部力量能管得住美国时，他就开始肆无忌惮地把中国树立成敌人。你看这几年，从贸易战到科技封锁，从各种脱钩断链到地缘围堵，很多人以为这是某一位总统的突发奇想。但如果你把时间线拉长，你会发现，这是美国骨子里长期存在的必须唯我独尊的战略本能。他们绝不允许有任何人、任何国家在经济和影响力上接近自己。为了遏制中国崛起，他们甚至不惜用杀敌1000、自损800的单边主义操作，试图强行切断全球的产业链。但说实话，这里面有一个极其致命的死局，或者说悖论。大家仔细想想，美国在全球赖以生存的最核心霸权武器到底是什么？不是满世界巡航的核动力航母，也不是几纳米的先进芯片，而是那个绿花花的纸——美元。美国现在满世界挥舞制裁大棒，像黑手党一样逼着盟友选边站队，动不动就长臂管辖，甚至直接冻结别国的外汇储备。这种极端的作死打法，表面上看起来是天下无敌，随心所欲，但实际上他正在精准地切断自己霸权的生命线。在最后这段高潮里，陈老先生用大量长线事实，直接指出了美元霸权最脆弱的命门，可以说是字字珠玑，直接判了这种单边主义的死缓。
And that is the United States dollar rests on one point, just like the tip of my pencil here. That point is one word. It's called what? Trust. Right? And somebody told me that actually former Premier Wen Jiabao, while he was Premier of China, he said the entire global economy rests on one word, trust. I said, yeah, he's very perceptive. If the whole economy rests on the one word of trust, how about a currency? Especially now that it is no longer tied to gold. And so the United States dollar is very possible, very, very possible that it may break because of the breaking of confidence. All the unilateral actions of the United States is pushing America toward that point, but perhaps America is the least cognizant of that possibility. Consider this. The United States unilaterally sanctioned Iran. Then they got a coalition, and then Trump broke it, right? We all know the history. In the past, and the United States sanctioning Iran, so you cannot use US dollars to deal with Iran. So what happened? In the old days, everything go through the SWIFT system, where all the currencies are matched out in that global platform. And so the Europeans are forced to create another platform just to bypass the United States sanctioning of Iran by not allowing them to use the US dollar. And so you can see, and I can give you many, many more examples like that, that voluntarily or involuntarily, such as running out of money, the United States dollar is in a very difficult position. I forgot to say one thing about US isolationism, and that is, a lot of people forget that the United States was never founded on internationalism. It's always founded in unilateralism. On isolationism. Consider Monroe Doctrine of 1823. Consider Manifest Destiny. Consider the fact that the United States never joined the League of Nations after World War I. Consider the trade barriers after World War I that eventually led to the Great Depression of 1929 to 1933. And today, the United States is still not paying United Nations dues, by the way. Another story. 1998 or 1999, I forgot. I was invited by a U.S. senator to his hometown. Just friends, because I know him, I know his wife. He himself came to pick me up at the airport. I won't tell you where it is, but if you know something about America, you can figure out. This gentleman is today really somebody, okay? And anyway, he picked me up at the airport. We spent 3 days together. Took me to horse racing. I never knew how good his wife was. I was impressed. Moving about in those social occasions, helping her husband, political career. And one day, the couple took me in his car, and the senator, who is today really somebody in the United States, drove me around to show me their hometown. They were very proud of it. And I thought to myself, this city has probably 50,000 people. It's smaller than Sha Tin of Hong Kong. So what the heck am I? I'm not interested in this place. I had only one interest. My interest was to try to convince my friend to pay up the United Nations dues that they owe. That was 1998, I believe it was. And 2-3 years ago, I was in his office again in Washington, D.C. I said to him, so-and-so, remember that time you hosted me and I tried to convince you to pay United Nations dues? Sir, I'm a failure because you still are owing the United Nations. Of course, they left WHO and whoever else. I think they also left UNESCO. And so all these are signs that America is moving back to isolationism. And if the United States dollar were to fall, everyone will suffer. But who will suffer the most? The United States will suffer the most. And when that happens, I believe that the United States may be forced back to isolationism to nurture its self-inflicted wounds. America is too strong for anybody to beat them. And the US dollar is too strong for anybody to beat them. Beat it. The only one that can do so is America. And as far as I can see, America is working double time, triple time, doing exactly that.
信用也就是 trust 这两个字重如千钧。当一个黑手党老大连最基本的规矩都不顾，瞎收保护费，动辄就把原本作为全球公共产品的金融网络当成自家的私行工具时，试问全球还有哪个国家敢真心实意的把身家性命完全绑在你的货币上？回头看看这2年的世界局势，你会发现陈启宗当年的预言是何等精准，去美元化早就不是一个停留在纸面上的学术概念了。全球多国央行都在疯狂抛售美债，狂买黄金，新兴国家之间在不断推进本币结算网络。这不是什么巧合，而是正在真实发生的地缘经济板块大重构。这就是这段几年前的演讲，在今天看来依然无比炸裂的原因所在。陈启宗没有用廉价的口号去煽动情绪，也没有用复杂的学术模型去故弄玄虚，他只是用极其冰冷、残酷的现实主义视角告诉我们一个道理：真正能打败美国的，永远不会是外部力量，而是那个被绝对权力腐蚀，在单边主义和孤立主义之间疯狂横跳的美国自己。为了遏制中国，美国选择了最激进、最作死的单边路线，但这种没有清晰战略、没有终局规划的豪赌，最终结出的苦果，必然是对美国自身霸权根基的彻底反噬。这不仅是一个旧帝国的黄昏，更是我们这个时代正在经历的世界秩序大洗牌。好，以上就是今天节目的全部内容。大家觉得在信任出现如此巨大的裂缝之后，美元霸权还能再撑多久？欢迎在评论区留下你的看法。我们下期见。